All right. Welcome everybody to the backdrop design meeting that happens on a fortnightly basis. Today is Thursday, March 9th, and we'll start off with some quick introductions and then get on to the task at hand. My name is Luke McCormick. I'm a web project manager in San Ramon, California, and I got nothing else to say. So let's go to Robert since he's not muted.
I'm Robert Lang, bug folder on the internet, and I'm in Altadena, California. And I'll pass it to Greg.
Hi, I'm Greg. I'm joining from Melbourne, Australia. Yeah, there wasn't that much activity in the issue queue, in the core issue queue, but there's a lot of exciting issues. Let's go to Martin.
Hi, I'm Martin, Yorkshire Pudding on the internet, and I'm in northeast England. I haven't really been looking at the issue queue much. Trying to pick out a suitable theme. I do think our themes could do with a bit of love, because there's quite a lot of unsupported ones in the theme library. So it must be quite a frustrating experience for new users. Go to Tim.
Tim Erickson, sometimes known as St. Paul Tim, in Deerwood, Minnesota, and looking outside, just a few squirrels today. Jen, back to you.
And Lampton, joining from Oakland, California, where it is very cold and about to have a storm, which is exciting. But the good thing about a storm means that I'm inside a lot and I get to play with Backdrop more. So, all right. For this week, I added one issue to the agenda only because I was working on the site where I originally wrote the patch and realized I was still applying the patch with core updates. And I was like, oh, this patch is almost ready. And this is something that allows us to add a visibility rule for layouts to tell whether you're looking at your own user profile page or somebody else's user profile page. And there were a couple of issues going on at the same time with this. There was a something that Argipiano fixed with the context. You need to, like, if there's a required user context, there should either be one required or two required. And if you have two required and you have one present, that should not count as true. And so he fixed that problem. And this pull request is a great way to test his fix, but you had to sort of test them together. This is also a little bit confusing because the way the options were worded, especially in panels where it came from, was like user : compare. And then how do you describe I'm looking at my own versus I'm looking at someone else's in a way that's not necessarily the profile page. And so we went back and forth a lot on the language to use and whether it should be a select list, which is what it is by default, or I think we ended up changing it to like radio buttons or something that just made more sense. And it would be good just to get more eyes on that to see if the current approach is good. And then if so, I wrote the pull request for that, so I can't do my own code review. So just get someone's eye on that as well. But most of that code did come from panels, so we should be pretty close, I think. This is issue, for anyone that's wondering, issue 4029. And we did also add in the last release, I think, we added a new visibility rule for taxonomy term parents. And this is sort of in the same light as that, where obviously this rule won't be used by 80% of sites, but having it as a part of layouts makes layouts a more robust feature, and 80% of sites will definitely be using layouts.
Speaking about layout and conditions, I've also added an issue about a visibility condition for 404, 403, and 200. That might be useful as well.
Status code. Yeah, I think panels had one of those too. So that should be easy to pull over.
Yeah, pretty straightforward. It was small, but didn't take a lot of lines of code.
Great. Okay. I
Yeah, sorry.
sorry.
I've added a bunch of issues in the agenda while you
Oh,
were.
I see. Okay.
It's the ones that had
Nice.
a recent activity. Yeah.
I did a quick search for the modules page issue and I didn't turn it up.
Yeah, I'll try to find it.
Okay, well, I'll start on some of these other ones. So next up is issue 4586, which is to move the add new X bottom to or add new X item. So like every menu in like content types, it lists all of the current content types and then it has add a new one and they're all at the same level. And this recommendation was just to take the add new link and put it at the bottom instead of at the top. I find that I often, when I'm adding something new, I want to search the list first to make sure it doesn't already exist, and add new is usually the last option I would choose. And so it makes sense for me more intuitively to have it at the bottom. So I wrote, I think, a little pull request to do that. Maybe I didn't write this. But it looks like where we're at right now is that it is enjoyed by a few, but it would be good to get more eyes on it to make sure that that's something that isn't going to bother people by moving it. So this, again, Luke, is something where like we think it's an improvement, but like time will tell on it. And so I think if we can get just a little more advance notice to make sure that people know it's coming and aren't going to be upset by that change. Big.
Yeah. So that pull request was I started off with yours, Jen, and then I filed one. So I have a screenshot
Great.
there of before and after. Peter had some very good suggestions to make this. Initially, it was just another checkbox, but having it as radios does feel better because you know what the options are. And then I realized that entire page was like a page of checkboxes, and it seemed a bit confusing. So just the additional out of Scopy thing was to just add field sets around what is settings and what are components that can be enabled and disabled. So I think it looks kind of slick as well.
Yeah, that's much better.
Yeah. So this is ready for review.
I'm not sure that needs to be a setting. That's another question too, like where the add new link things is. There's now a setting in the user interface for that. But that probably the only reason for that setting is so that we can have it be backwards compatible, and people who've already installed Backdrop and gotten used to it at the top could choose to have it at the top instead of at the bottom. But like from a new user perspective, this is one of those things that like really shouldn't be a setting. It's something that we should just sort of put in the right place. And so there might be a way, and this is another thing where more feedback from people would help us decide on this, because the way we have it currently is the safest route. But I think from like user experience of the admin bar settings page, this is a big minus, which I'm not sure is really important. But it's something we could be solving in another way with like a hidden core variable, a system core config value or something too. So yeah, I don't know. I don't feel strongly about it, but it would be interesting to see what other people see of that too. It also could be something that like exists until Backdrop 2 and then we remove it. So if we change our minds, we can. This looks great though. I like the field sets, Greg. That's a good improvement. All right, next issue, number 2450. Ooh, an old one.
And this is one where you actually, it's a good segue, because in the pull request that you had filed, you actually included the fix that we were talking before. That you actually, I'm not sure if it was, maybe you were working on 2 different branches and you actually had that. And I made a comment because the pull request was really old and I tried to fork off of yours, but then when I tried to do a merge request again against yours, you had like hundreds and hundreds of commits. So even when I rebased my branch, and I'm not sure. Yeah, anyways, so I've chosen to file an alternative one just to get the sandbox going to see how it looks. So yeah, I can share my screen because there's other UX issues that I'm not sure if they're related to that. The major one is that when you manage displays in Drupal 7, the displays are listed in secondary buttons, right? And you can navigate between them. And also, it's not obvious now how you go back to the list of things now. So the way that it is, if I share my screen, it's like you're there, you've navigated yourself to a specific display that you're editing. And the way to go back, it's just to click the same tab that is already active.
That is
So-
weird.
Yeah, or you hit, of course, the browser back button. So we need either a cancel button or something that says back to the list of displays or something like that.
Yeah, it should be, this might just be the way that displays are added into the menu is a little funky, and it might just be like we chose the wrong menu item type, where if we had another item type, you might automatically get the buttons and the breadcrumb. But yeah, we should figure out why that's not working how we think it is.
I can share my screen for a while and show there's a few things that we need to decide. Just bear with me. Let me find which one it is. I think it's this one, right? I hope I'm sharing the right screen. Let's see. Yes, right. So this is the pull request actually. So I'll file fire the sandbox side. By the way, I would like to say, because this is a service that has been offered to us for some time now for free by Tagbot, like this is so useful. We have like sort of like I've been taking it for granted for so long, but it's so useful. We have gotten used to it. Like a huge thank you. Anyway, so this was about structure, for example. Let's go to this and then the manage display thing. So this adds these things here. Let me make it a bit bigger. So there's a few things. If you go to manage fields, we say directly body or whatever. Let's go one. So it has image, body, tags, right? So the way that we made it with displays now, it prepends this post thing. And I retained it because that's the way that you had it, Jen. But I don't think that we already have it here, the item. So I think that this should be removed, but I'm waiting for feedback on that. And also we don't say body field, image field, tags field here. So we are repeating the word display. So I'm not sure if this is necessary since we are in the manage displays menu.
Yeah.
And it's also display mode and not display, but yeah. So that's one thing. Then we have consistency because in taxonomy, again, you have the same thing added. But if we go to file types, we already had manage file display, which has these two things. And
Yeah.
the pull request, yeah, so we need to maybe remove this. And I'm not sure if we like to call it manage file display or just for consistency have a manage display, similar how to have manage
So
fields.
files have both a entity display and a file display.
All right, so this is the
So-
default, but it's the
So
same.
well, yeah, because there's a default file display and a default entity display. Just go to the page, and I don't know if the file display needs to be in the menu. That might just be confusing people. But if you click on one of these links,
The ones that are introduced by this PR or?
yeah, well, either
Yes,
one.
okay. I'll go. Yeah, all right, let's do the default one.
See how there's a new tab up there that says Manage File Display?
Right.
So we have both,
Oh.
and there is a issue to make everything that's in this file display tab appear as a field setting on the Manage Displays file row, which I personally think would be where I would expect to find those settings. So I don't know how that then interacts with this PR. Like, should we leave everything in the admin menu? Should we take file display out of the admin? I don't even know if the links that are in there now are file display and not the entity display. But that might explain why we have that weird file display option in the.
I wasn't aware of that issue that you were talking about, but if you find it and cross-link it, cross-reference it from that one, that would be, yeah, because I didn't realize that I thought that it were actually displays. Yeah. Good
When you
one.
click on that manage file, I have no guess what's in there.
Yeah, so this is we inherited this from the file entity module in Drupal 7. It's icky.
It has some audio settings. These are settings specific to the audio files for autoplay and loop, which don't apply to images, things like that, and how it's going to be presented as a download link. Yeah, right. Yeah, I see now. I assumed that that was going to be, and I didn't. Yeah, and the other one, what was the? Yes, and the other one is just basically if I go to any of these displays, let's actually go to the user accounts because it's another. So this is one thing that annoys me a lot, and I don't know how this happened. So when you go to content types or taxonomy or the file types, you have separate sibling menus for managed fields and managed displays. They're on the same level. But if you go to configuration user accounts, the managed displays is under managed fields, which is like, I don't know, it's annoying. I don't know how this ended up being there, but it is. Yeah, let's go there. Right. So also in a place where we have multiple displays, enabled. All right, I'll go here and I'll enable a few more displays. Let's enable this one. Right. And then this one. So say I want to manage one of those displays, I'll manage the default one. I'm still in the manage displays sort of like section, and there's no like besides the go back button in the browser, like there's no actual control to tap here to go back to where you were in the list. So we either need a cancel button here to go back, or ideally how Drupal 7 worked, there was a list of secondary tabs, and I'll show what secondary tabs are just as a reminder that would show the display. So I'm talking about these pill-like thingies. So
Yeah.
these are missing, and I'm not sure if it should be a follow-up issue. It feels like it should be part of that issue that we're doing there.
I think there might be something bigger wrong with our secondary tabs that they aren't displaying, because they aren't displaying in a couple of places. It might be worth like a dedicated issue to be like, what the heck? Where did these go and why?
Cool.
So that I found the other issue for moving the
Yes.
manage file display and just linked that up there. I also put it in the agenda.
Right, yes, sorry, I haven't noticed that one.
Whoa,
Yes.
an issue Greg didn't notice.
I'm getting old, I'm forgetting now. I'm getting forgetful. Right, cool. So yeah, I'm not sure if there's anything to showcase in the other issues that we have. Right, yes, this is a confusing one. So good, I have, since I have the view up, like this is easier to show what the UX issue is, like actually showing it instead of describing it, right? So I'll go to that one. I think it's, so we've done that. This one, and yeah, this is the one, I think. Right, let's discuss that one. So this was I don't know, Tim, if you feel like describing it, or if you want me to go ahead, because you were the one that raised this. That's the one with where the person that had a lot of experience with
Well, Jen, were you here when we talked about this last or not?
I don't think so, but I immediately see the problem.
yes.
Okay. Good. This was Mike Canello, but Mike Canello did a little lightning talk at Florida Drupal Camp where he said things I dislike about Drupal or something to that effect. And this was a pet peeve of his. And again, it isn't a big issue for me, but I thought, well, maybe we could fix that quickly in Backdrop and then push it back to Drupal.
Yeah.
Is it? I mean, yeah, I'm a little bit foggy in my head right now because I'm thinking about
I
two
can-
things. So.
No, that was
Go
perfect.
ahead.
I wanted the introduction, and I can
Yep.
say where we're at
Sure.
now.
Yep. Good.
So the initial discussion was to change this to content view mode, be more descriptive about it, right? So when I started reviewing KZJB's
We're
pull
not
request,
using the word view mode in Backdrop though. That's a Drupal term.
Display.
It would be, yeah, display mode.
I
Display.
think we changed it after
Yes.
that.
Okay.
that-
this
I
was the
didn't
initial
scroll
version.
down.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there's two pull requests now. The initial was from KZJB, and then I filed another one, and we had a lot of discussions. So the initially, I just the thing that tripped me was the capitalization here. But then as I started reviewing things, which is what usually happens, yes. So this is
There's
the
display.
other, yes. This is what we ended up being. So we have discussions now about what's confusing and not, and I can fire up one of the pull request sandboxes to discuss this. Then a few things that I suggested, I tried to play around with things. Maybe it would be more obvious if we had show content, but the display mode here. Then we discussed the dialogue. Well, you set the settings that it might have been better if we added help text, individual help
Descriptions.
text. Yes, and I think then what I suggested is to actually call it a field source, because this is what we're actually specifying. Where are the fields being, not source, field management?
But there might not be any fields. So I'm not sure field source is the right.
Maybe results. Look, when I say fields, I mean not the content fields, but the database, the results. I don't know what to call them. Anyway, this is what
data
we
source.
Yes, that's why we need feedback. What to call things.
How can there not be fields? I'm sympathetic to not throwing that at users that might not think that way, but isn't every bit of content in the system in some fielders?
No, all like if you add fields to things, it'll be in a field, or even if you're using the body field, it'll be in a field. But you could have a node type that has a title, which is not a field, and then a whole bunch of other stuff that's added to that node by other modules. So you could have I have a node type that automatically does an API request to an external source and then builds a table. And when you look at the default view mode, you see the whole table, but that's not anywhere on the Backdrop site. It was pulled in from an external source. So I think we need to be a little careful with, especially I get it, Greg, it's a database field or database whatever, and that totally makes sense. But I think we need to be careful with using that word field, because people might be looking for what they see elsewhere in the UI where it says field, and if there is no giant table coming from an external source, in my example, anywhere in the field system, that could be really confusing. If they're it says right here, it's got this field. So yeah, what was that name of that? I don't think that was named any better before, but what was the name of the setting? Was it just show : or something like that?
Yes, it's called
Yeah.
show.
Interesting.
So here's what I went by. I have to admit that my view of this was limited, and thanks for pointing that out. So I went by what we do in core, and but this is, yes, it can be extended, as you said. But what I went by, so the solution was that effectively the two choices that we have here, what happens when you change to this and you say apply, right? I'll just say apply here, whatever. Right, what changes is that you are not managing the fields here anymore, which was the other option. You need to go to a display mode, which would be this, whatever you specify here, a content display mode, and manage the fields there. So my whole solution was tailored around that fact that you're not managing this here. And even the descriptions.
Well, so we also have to be a little careful, because you can tell views to use the field settings for each individual field too.
Yeah, but you can't do it from within views. You have to go to the content type, right? Or whatever applies to this.
So if that was set to fields instead of content, you can then in the fields say use the field settings from fields UI and don't do anything in views. So I think views managed isn't really the right terms. I do like this mental model though, and it might be better to say something like individual fields, where content display mode totally makes sense, because that's going to match what they see elsewhere. And I think the main use case I have when I want to use fields is when I want to use different fields than show up in the view modes, fewer of them or in a different order or something. And so I think if it was individual fields, that might give people a little bit better idea of what they could do with it. without implying that like you have to manage your fields in views if you did it that way.
All right, I want to devil's advocate for a second here, because my favorite part of what Greg just did was in fact the part that you just threw out, was the views managed thing, because like no matter what, the site builder is managing fields or displays or like the things they're
Right,
managing.
but when you select views
chunks.
managed fields, you're not necessarily managing them in views. You're probably managing them in field UI. It is possible to override that and manage them in views and add your own classes and your own wrappers and your own templates or whatever, but you don't have to do it that way.
Oh yeah, I just meant like
Well, I have- yeah, well, I have-
we might be talking about different elements, but I'm just talking about the one that says, field source there.
Yeah,
So like for each row of a view, you're spewing something.
yes.
And you obviously care what you're spewing. And so the question is, if you want to edit that, are you editing it here in views or
Right,
at the system level?
right.
So
Same thing. We're talking about the same thing.
oh yeah, I know.
You can set up views managed fields to be managed at the system level.
Yeah, which is confusing now that I
Yeah, and
I don't have
didn't
an
know you
ideal
could do that.
solution.
I don't understand
Yeah,
that.
Well,
I believe you.
That.
but another thing too with views managed is like everything on this form is views managed, right?
Yeah.
So that also is like, well, the path, it's a views managed path. Menu, it's a views managed menu.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure it's adding, like, I understand, like, I like the mental model where you're separating the like view mode from the not view mode. But I don't think we should call it views managed because I don't think that adds a lot of value just on its own. And it's not always going to be correct either.
Yeah.
So we need to find another way to say the same thing that,
Well,
that doesn't imply that.
Except the display
Custom field
modes
display.
aren't display modes not managed by views? Although Backdrop has uses views all over the place. So maybe that's where I'm getting confused there. But like,
Yeah.
like in terms of like setting up a view, like
They're not
that-
opposites. It's not like views managed fields is not the opposite of display modes. It's just another option that could use the settings from a display mode if you want it to. So that's where it gets confusing.
Yeah.
I'm not sure, and I think like the majority of times they end up being views managed fields, and that might be your entire experience with it, and that might be 80% of people's entire experience with it. But it is possible to have it not be that way, and so I think having that like that just indicates to me that that's not quite the correct label, because we're describing something that isn't. It's close, but it's not technically what it is. So, yeah.
I have to say that I achieved my goal, which is like to trigger your thoughts. Just go back and make comments because everything you say is useful. Like everyone, just I'm sure that we'll flesh it out. We just need to figure out terminology and wording basically.
Yeah.
Martin, you were about to say something to add something to that.
I think I was just suggesting custom fields display as a possible phrase, but not convinced about that. But I guess that's what you do, because when you're adding the individual fields, you are you get to customize everything about those fields there. So
for a moment, I had a very crazy idea, by the way, while Jen and Luke were talking, because I don't know, whatever we do here, like it takes the name of the view and the display and actually manifests itself as a display here. So then it becomes another display mode here, but that might be confusing. It might, anyways, yeah. Well, crazy idea.
Like views only work with display modes, and in order to add one, you have to go to the content type. Well, that could be hard too, because I mean, I don't know. This is the kind of thing where you like have to turn your brain around and look at everything backwards from how you do now. I'm like, maybe that makes more
then
sense.
that gets very complicated where you're bringing in things from a relationship.
Yes.
Because that's really not going to work with the content type display modes.
Yeah, because one of my pet peeves, and we have an issue for that, is this thing here. you click rearrange to rearrange things that are here. So we have an issue. So this is how you rearrange fields when you have multiple here, right? And I have an issue where we basically, I was asking to expose this draggability thing directly here. So you can drag and drop things here. That's why my brain went to, we're already doing that with displays. This is what we're doing. We're managing fields, and this is too small a UI. And this is why we resorted in this thing here, which is, yeah, anyways. Yeah, I don't know. And if you think about it, we are not adding fields sort of here. It's just showing them. Adding, well, you can
Well,
say
we're
that.
adding them to the
To
view,
the-
but we're not
yes.
adding
Yeah.
them
Yeah.
to the node type.
Yeah, anyways,
Yeah.
lots of things to think about.
Yeah, poor views UI. It's so powerful and so complicated. So much room for improvement. Yeah, this is great though. And I would love, Tim, to your point, I would love to see us get something in that we can contribute back to Drupal, and then the Drupal community can bike shed about whatever these labels should be for a while. And then when they land on something, we can see if we like those better than what we came up with.
Might be 10 years before Drupal really land on something.
Drupal 20. Here we go.
Well, Mike Ganello did open an issue. He sort of implied that it got stuck being bike shedded, but there's actually not that much discussion. So I think we might actually be able to push them to solve this if we give them a good suggestion. We'll see.
Yeah, and then a good segue. So these are related things. Maybe I filed those issues while I was working on the other one, because that's how I try to work on things and I go, this is confusing. I'm jumping about like from place to place. It shouldn't be that way. So that was this issue that we were talking about, right? Show content and show fields. But this is a nasty user experience, or I shouldn't call it nasty, but it's not ideal. So this is what I was doing. I'll explain what was the trigger. So I thought that it would be okay to add individual descriptions on its, yes, which is fine. But there's also another description which applies to the entire set. And it's kind of very close to these descriptions, and I got annoyed. So you might see screenshots where I've added, duplicated this within those descriptions, but it applied to both, right? And then duplication, I don't like duplication, but still I didn't like this. And then I go, all right, what are we telling people here? That there's another tab that should be here, or some additional settings depending on what they select, right? So this basically is a shortcut for this, right here. And then the equivalent, because I'm trying to match this to already existing patterns where we're doing a better job. And then what I thought was, so if I go to add content real quick, I'll do a page. And now you can see why I have so many tabs, right? You see my habit of just when I go back to things. So if we take as an example the this thing here, I like the pattern that we have here. So this is a dialogue, and we have two different things, right? Two different things here. One that loads something else, right? And I thought that maybe instead of having this thing, well, yes, it manifests, which basically takes you to the other page. Maybe we could have this sort of thing here, where you select what it is, and then the settings are there, because they're called settings in both scenarios. Or, I don't know, this is really small. I don't know why we're not putting it in the previous screen. And see, now I can't go back to the previous screen. I just have to do cancel and do this again. So yeah, anyways, I don't like the experience here, because it takes you to a place that you can't go back to. So, and maybe it shouldn't be here in the first place, but maybe those things should be merged into a same thing, a single dialogue. And since we have states, we can use states, and depending on what the person selects here, there's the relevant settings show below, which is not, again, this is a pattern that we use in other places. So I don't know why we're doing this weird thing. I think that these weird things are, there's two factors that how they ended up here. A is as you mentioned, Jen, the complexity of the UI for views, because it's a very complicated thing, and we try to fit everything there. And also the disconnect, because views started as a contrib thing, and it sort of like evolved independently from core, but now in both Drupal and Backdrop, it's part of core. So maybe it's just the history of how it ended up here. So I don't know.
So
Anyway.
I think another thing that makes that a little bit complicated is that that link doesn't go to the settings for that selection. It goes to the settings of the selection above, which is confusing. So like it goes to the unformatted list settings,
Mm.
doesn't it? Maybe not. That's what I thought I saw, but maybe.
No, this is different. So if I change, yes, this is another thing. Right. So if I don't save, if I do this, yes, if I do this and I click settings, now I'm going to the settings for the other thing because I didn't save it yet. This
Wait,
is why I'm
go-
saying maybe it shouldn't be here. Like,
Go to the settings again.
yes, if I go to settings,
Row style. Okay, will you close this?
yes. So if I switch it, I'll switch it now so that
Wait,
you.
no, go to unformatted list settings.
Sorry, go to where here.
The
Oh, this is-
unformatted those, yeah. Page style options. Okay, I was wrong. This is not the same form I thought we were
No,
going
this
to.
is this applies to this item here. But what I was
Yeah.
referring to is that yeah, say the
I thought
person.
it linked the other one, but
Yeah. So now the only way that this applies is that I need to do this, which already takes me to the respective thingy. This shows the right thing depending on according to what I selected previously. So yeah, anyways, this is clunky user experience. Like, yeah,
yeah.
separate issue. But
Yeah, something that I think we could benefit from in core, and I don't know how easy or hard this would be, is a step indicator. Every time you're in a modal that leads to another modal, it would be good if it was like step 1 of 3, and then you could go to the second modal and it'd be like step 2 of 3. Because right now, like, I don't know, when I click that button, is the modal going to close and take me back to views, or is it just going to keep throwing more modals at me? And I think if we had that, it might be a lot easier to chain together more of these modals that are currently independent actions. And for sure, sometimes it's nice to like just go to the page step 3 or whatever. But in some of these cases, I think having them all proceed in a normal fashion might make more sense. The same order.
right.
But yeah, I totally agree. If I liked the behavior of when you clicked the item automatically took you to the next form. If we could make that happen for both of them, then we could probably remove that settings, because there's oh no, because then if you just came to an already existing one, you'd be like, where are my settings? Yeah, I don't know how to fix that.
I'm gonna interrupt here quick. I have to leave. I'm gonna both contribute to this discussion and pitch Backdrop Live. Let's get some more topics on the schedule, although it's filling out nicely in the last few days. Thank you, everybody who did. Luke's being provocative. I love it. But in terms of this discussion, what about a topic at Backdrop Live that's let's improve the use UI? And somebody in advance like gathers a list of all the currently open issues and does a quick intro of like what suggestions there are, and then we just use it to brainstorm. Like it's a screen share, we've got the Views UI open, and we try to get people pitching how can we make it better.
I like it.
Okay,
I'd be happy to, but I'm probably too heavy-handed to do that.
we just need a facilitator.
I certainly want to participate in it, and I'm happy to facilitate it if you don't mind.
Before
China shop.
Yeah, before we move away, Roberts and Arzipiano's issue about the grouping independent checkboxes visually, or that's a good thing before we go.
Okay, I gotta go. We'll see you guys.
Okay,
Yes, sure.
bye, Tim.
Maybe it's hard to describe. Maybe I'll share my screen again. Just bear with me. Where's my option? Oh, there's Zoom. Sorry, my computer is really slow from all the tabs that I have open, most likely. What happened now? No, sharing the wrong screen. Please be it. Yes. All right, so another thing, before I was going by whatever had a UX issue here, but what I like to do is for other people that are trying to find design issues, is I like to go to the issue queue, the core issue queue, and do this. So yes, if you think that just as a preparation for this meeting, if you think that one of the issues needs to be brought up during this meeting, it's good to tag it with design, which makes it easier for us to find it then. And what I'm talking about is this issue here, taxonomy checkboxes, use indentation. Basically.
I use the design label quite differently. I use it for only issues where we need a designer. And that way, when we get a designer who has some time, they can use that label to go through our I need a pretty picture issues.
Do we need a different label or way to tag them, because design and UX are different? So we have a way to filter UX issues, which is this, but not necessarily design issues. Maybe we need another label. Regardless, yes. Sorry, disregard what I just said. Then if you,
I mean, I think everyone can use it however they want. So,
but this is the problem. This is the problem. So this is an older screenshot. I have further screenshots. Initially, we used to have dashes to indicate here the depth of nested taxonomy children when they were presented as radios or checkboxes. And there was this contrib module which was called taxonomy term reference tree widget, right? And it actually nested them beautifully without doing all this nastiness with the dots. At some point, the dashes. At some point, we replaced the dashes with mid dots, but that didn't improve the situation here either, right?
it's slightly better.
It's less annoying, I would say. But yeah, then
It creates a little more distance, which I think is easier visually to like. But yeah, Anyway, carry on.
And then the maintainer of that module for Backdrop is Robert, who's on the call with us. I said, hey, Robert, how about we just strip this functionality for that module and maybe we can put it here? And we opened a whole new can of worms. So yes, we have done that, but by we, I mean Robert, Alejandro, and myself that were reviewing this, right? We decided that this functionality, like, it can benefit the form API in general, which then was the, maybe I shouldn't be bringing that up. This issue, which is a DX issue, it's not a UX, so maybe not discuss it. Anyway, what we're trying to do now is introduce an indentation property that can benefit other places as well. But this is the goal. Once we have this, which we are pretty close, we're just nitpicking now and trying to make it appropriate, we can solve this issue. Plus also, we have added a tool for developers to use in Contrib or custom code. So this is another good, a good issue.
This is great. What number is this? 3?
I'll add it to 3292.
Yeah.
I'll add it.
That solution looks beautiful.
And then
indentation.
the pound indentation property issue is for adding that to FAPI is $59.99.
Yes.
Yeah, I heard about that discussion last week. I had a thought. I don't know if this maybe should wait for the design meeting, but I'll go add it to the issue either way.
But yes, interesting things all around. Go in the issue queue and grab a thing if you like to work on. We could use reviews, feedback, things that we haven't thought about. So yes, the more we improve things, the better the user experience in general. People. And I would like to make, so before we started this meeting, we had a sort of like a pre-meeting discussion as we do, and Luke mentioned how we have inherited annoying things from Drupal because that's our source, right? That's where we started, and that we should be fixing this. But I would like to say that how each time that because my day job doesn't involve using Backdrop, right? Each time that I use Backdrop, and I have as a reference, I go back to a D7 site, or even sometimes the newer versions, 9 or 10. I can't put my finger on it exactly, but I find working with Backdrop much less annoying. And it's all the small things that we have added over the last 10 years. So it doesn't have to be a big user experience improvement. We have added so many tiny ones that it has made life easier, I think. So, yeah.
It'd be a nice slogan for the Backdrop homepage.
A less annoying Drupal 7. Much less annoying Drupal 7. Right. So yeah, we're over time a bit. Sorry, I didn't leave time for anyone else, and I hope the entire discussion.
That's all right. These are great issues. Okay, I'm